Most animal cells are diploid, which means they have two sets of chromosomes. We could see that right here represented with the 2N. But what they also make haploid cells, which are the one ends, that one chromosome in them, and those are the reproductive cells, the egg and the sperm, and they make those by meiosis. And most animals reproduce sexually, but some can also do it asexually. And when in reproduction, then the smaller sperm is the motile one, and it's smaller, so that means again it can move. And then that swims and fuses with a larger egg that is sessile, which means it's not moving, it's stable, it's stationary. And then it fertilizes the egg. So the sperm then fertilizes the egg. And we can see that right here. We see the gametes, the sperm here, and then the egg. And then when they fertilize, they create a zygote, which is the fertilized egg. And we can see that right here. And then a zygote is back to being a diploid organism. Cell division and specialization follow next. We classify animals by these early steps of the development. And many animals, like you can see here, the monkey, the young one look similar, like they look like small adults. They look similar to the adults. But then we have insects, some insects and amphibians, and they go through larval stages and they undergo complete, what we call a complete metamorphosis. And we see here the larvae, and then we see the adult organism, and that's a complete metamorphosis. And what's interesting is, the larvae and the adults, they rely on different, sometimes habitat, but certainly different diets. And then we have other young, and they somewhat resemble the adult and go through stages separated by molts. And molts is when we shed the skin. And so that's called incomplete metamorphosis. And we can see that right here where we get a nymph and then it molts and becomes an adult. And the reason why we got to do that is because a lot of these animals have exoskeletons, and they're hard-shelled skeletons. And as the animal grows, it can expand, and so it has to shed the outer skin in order to be growing. And so that's why we have that. So that's incomplete metamorphosis. Making genetically identical daughter cells from the parent cells is when we reproduce asexually. And invertebrates, those are the organisms without a backbone or a spine, they reproduce this way. Or some fish can also, some amphibians and reptiles. But birds and mammals, they rarely reproduce asexually. When we look at the asexual reproduction, we have a few types that can happen. And one type is when a new individual develops as an outgrowth or a bud from the parent organism. And we can see that right here, where we have a bud that grows out, or here it grows out, has grown out. Parts of the parent body also can break off, and that part then is capable of developing into a new individual. We call that fragmentation. Well, the first one we call budding. You can see that we're right up here. The second one here is fragmentation. You can see that here with the starfish here, where you can see a part is falling off, and that part becomes a new starfish, a new individual. In rare cases, an unfertilized egg grows into an offspring without needing a sperm. And this is called parthenogenesis, parthenogenesis, and it means virgin beginning. Animals are classified based on their shape and organization as well as how they develop. And they have different symmetrical body plans and also tissues. Animals come in layers. Layers of tissues. They have 2 layers or they have 3 layers, and that depends if they have a body cavity or not. And if you're looking at here, the animals, we have a lot of separations, but then look at here are the chordates, and that's all the vertebrates. So we're going to talk about all of those different ones coming up. Let's then talk briefly about body symmetry. The body parts distribute along an axis. And you can see that here in this goat. You can see an axis here. This is the axis. And if you actually look at the limbs come off the axis, the legs here, the head. And so that's what that is meant. So when we say body part distribution is along an axis. And so we have different plans, different fundamental body plans. Some of the animals, like the sponges, the very early ones, are asymmetrical. So they don't have that symmetry going on. But then we have some that are radially symmetrical. And in those, the body parts extend outward from a central axis. And you can see that in here, where we have a central axis, and then the body parts grow outward, and we can sort of separate them by a plane and then have mirror images of that. That's what that we could do with that. We have jellyfish, sea anemones, coral, starfish. They are plants that way, body plants that way, so to speak. And then we got the bilaterally symmetrical body plan, and that mirrors the left and the right side. And that's us, but also insects and fish and reptiles and birds. And so with us, I mean all the mammals included on that. Because, that body type is pretty cool because it makes us move. If you think about with the limbs attached on two sides, not on all sides, it's kind of a well-designed structure that way. And so it prevailed as a good design. And then we got the embryonic germ layers. Animals have 2 or 3 of those germ layers. And then these layers develop into specific sets of tissues and organs. Radially symmetrical animals have 2 layers and are known as diploblastic. You see that we're right in here. Diplo means 2. They have a endoderm, and that means inner skin. Derm means skin right here, and endo means inside. And they also have an ectoderm, and ecto means on the outside, so that means outer skin. Bilaterally symmetrical animals have 3 layers and are known as being then triploblastic, so 3. They add that a mesoderm, so they have an endoderm, an ectoderm, and in the middle we can see the diploblasts and the triploblasts. And you can see, I'm in the middle of it. That doesn't help. And you can see the endoderm is the inside. You can see both of them have it. The ectoderm, both of them have it. But then the mesoderm is specific to the triploblasts right in here. And then the mesoderm, that middle skin, develops into a fluid-filled cavity, and we call that the coelom. With then the organs such as the spleens, the kidneys, the circulatory system, and so forth can suspend inside that cavity. So let's talk a little bit more about the coelomates, because they differ depending on the organisms in the formation of the digestive tube in the early development. And so what we have in the early development, we have a blastopore, and that's the first opening into the digestive tube. And depending how, if that opening first is a mouth, the front end, or if it's the rear end, the anus, we call them different things, because the protostomes are the ones who have the mouth developed first, and they are evolutionarily older. And then the deuterostomes are when the mouth develops second. It's a nice way of saying getting the butt first. And their anus is the first opening to develop in those. And then the mouth is the second one as the tube grows through in development. And so, a small little difference for us. It's not really, we're going to not really worry about it too much more, but it's kind of interesting how that development happens. And then arthropods, mollusks, and annelids, they develop their mouth first, and we develop the mouth first, second, and start with the anus. We start with the back. All right. An interesting portion here. Well, and that's sort of the beginning done. So let's go then in the next videos into the diversities of the animal kingdom.